welcome back to the channel. I'm glad a lot of you have got a lot of benefit from the videos that I've produced, but I want to let you know that this is going to be the last martial arts video that I put out there, and at the end of the video I'm going to explain exactly why this is going to be my last martial arts video. There's two reasons why I'm producing this video, and number one is if you're a martial artist out there and you're going to train, maybe a lifetime, and you want to get the most out of your martial arts, I'm going to put together a concise way of thinking about the martial arts so you can get the maximum benefit from training. And that's something I wish I would have had figured out when I was younger, so I would have gotten a lot farther in the martial arts. And the second reason I'm doing this video is there's a lot of discussion about which technique is right, which school is right. Amongst the same school, you have bickering about whose kata is correct, whose kata is incorrect. And I think if you understand the bigger picture, it'll eliminate all of that thinking and give you an understand of what kata is and how to train with kata and how to understand there's value in lots of different ways of doing kata, and you shouldn't get so wrapped up in true lineage and this and that once you understand the big picture. In this video, I'm going to show the difference between kata, skill, and technique. And for those of you that are Katori Shinto Ryu practitioners, at the end I'm going to give a little bonus for you guys. First, I'm going to start with kata because I think kata is the most misunderstood of all three of these. Just to keep this video short, let's just give a real basic example. Let's say we send 100 people into battle and 3 people make it back. And then we send another 100 into battle and the same 3 make it back. Well, there's something those 3 understand or know that the other 97 didn't know. So what the village might do is say, well, let's take those 3 people and try to train all 100 to the same level that those 3 were at to be able to survive all that battling. So then they break it down into how can we do that? So those people didn't know back then, they didn't know anything about kata or anything like that, but those people would have a high amount of skill. They had maybe timing, they had balance, they had power, they had the ability to read the opponent, and all of these skills that it takes to be able to be a good fighter. So those 3 masters might sit down and say, how can we transmit the skills or the things that we know how to do to those other 97 people? So then those teachers might get together and say, well, one thing that's really important is a solid foundation, because if you don't have a solid foundation, you can't drive power forward effectively. And the next guy might say, yeah, that's true, but you also need to use your whole body to do the technique, to distribute the power. And the other guy might say, well, it's the timing to stay relaxed. It's the timing. So at the same time you solidify your stance, you're going to deliver the power so you're relaxed and you can fight all day. First teacher might say, okay, I'm going to put a solid stance, and once I'm solid, then I'm going to punch out from that solid stance. The next guy might say, well, I'm going to have the punch and the stance happen at the same time so that the power transfers at the same time. And then the next guy might say, well, I'm going to use all my rotational movement and I'm going to come up and use all my power maybe to do a down block. So I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to rotate my hips as I do this. So each teacher has a different skill that they are emphasizing in the basic. One way to look at this is to argue which teacher is the best and which kata is the best and which lineage is the best. But I think the better approach is to look at the kata and say, well, this develops this skill, this develops this skill, this develops this skill. So each one of those, if you master each one of those different ways of doing it, then you have 3 skills. But if you sit back and you say, well, everybody's doing it wrong but my teacher, you're going to really limit the amount of skills that you can get from the martial arts. Then what they would do is they would put each different skill in a series of movements. So you might have a down block, and then you have a punch, and then you walk and punch, 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 and then you come back because they realized stamina was important. So they'd string a bunch of different movements together to give the students stamina. So that would be the first level of kata. Then what the master might do is say, well, in the beginning katas, I'm going to put all these really basic movements, because you need, build your skills first. So you build foundational movements in the first katas. And then as you get more advanced, you start doing, one leg and balance and driving from one leg and jumping and kicking and all this other stuff. So as the katas progress, the skills necessary to do those katas actually get higher and higher. You need a teacher, and you can't learn this stuff online, is because the teacher guides you into developing skills, because just empty kata and doing empty kata, everybody laughs at, say, those dojos that they pump out all those black belts and they have no skills. So they have no coordination. They're wearing a black belt, but they have no coordination. And they're funny because you're supposed to be gaining skills as you go along, but with the wrong teacher, you're not gaining skills. You're just, getting a belt. Now let's move into technique. Now let's go back to those same 3 people that survived all those battles. Well, they survived not only because they had skill and timing and power, but they would learn to respond to certain ways of fighting. So if somebody punches like this, they found that something was effective at coming underneath or whatnot. And so that's what would become the technique. So the technique is, as you fight, you kind of develop ways of approaching a fight, and then that would become the technique. So taking the kata, this kata like this, and producing a movement, and that, that's, who would, punch and you go like this and like that. It would never happen that way in a real fight if somebody, fights you for real. So what they did is they hid inside of these kata something called bunkai, or the application of that. And that's what you study a lifetime to figure out how these masters saw the advancing of these. For a simple explanation, I'm just going to use karate again because you can see it on the video pretty easily. But say you do a block like this, and you do this for 50 years, and that's all you know how to do. But then you train with somebody that really knows how to study this, and this becomes a trap of the arm. So somebody's punching, and you're trapping, and you're pulling this back into a punch. So you're using that into a technique that gets closer to actual fight. Should be the application of skill, and not just, oh, I'm doing this movement and it's really pretty. You're actually applying a skill and putting power and body movement behind something to more effectively deliver your technique. So let's kind of review a little bit before we move on. So the kata is just a pattern of movements, and you study with a teacher to unlock both the skills and the techniques in those pattern of movements. And that's true whether you're studying karate, aikido, taekwondo, Katori Shinto Ryu, pretty much any stand-up art. That's what you're doing. I did is I sought out different instructors that had skills that I didn't possess. And some of them were karate teachers, some of them were aikido teachers, some of them were taekwondo teachers, and iaido instructors, and Katori Shinto Ryu. And I think the reason I stuck with Katori Shinto Ryu so much is because it brought all of the skills together, and then I could train them at a higher level, because when you put a stick to another stick, you need to have a higher level of skill to train in those arts. So kata is the framework with which to study a martial art. And in that framework, you learn a kata, a way of doing that. And the way you learn is to have a teacher point out the skills that you don't possess, and then also the techniques and how to perform those techniques. And that sort of pulls everything together. Pulling all this together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a real example of Katori Shinto Ryu, and not to teach the Katori Shinto Ryu, but just to give you an example of how these principles are studied in a weapon art, and it just applies to pretty much any stand-up art that I've trained in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show just a bare bones pattern. So if we do this pattern here, and he attacks, and I pull back, and I'm going to lift it, go to here, then I'm going to go to here, and then thrust. That's just the bare bones kata. Now we looked at the basic kata, which is pretty empty. You know, we're just banging a bunch of weapons together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a technical application of this first part. So when we're in this position and he attacks me, I'm actually cutting his wrist as I'm coming back and getting to this position. Once I get in this position, I can throw his weapon and attack him. Okay, so we looked at the bare bones kata, which is kind of essentially meaningless, and then we looked at a technique of the kata, or the actual application of that kata, or what's hidden inside of the kata if you study it for a long time. Now what I want to do is go over the skills necessary to make that work. And what I mean by this is this. If I just go like this, and he attacks, and I don't have any skills, I have to use my upper body to move his weapon, okay? It's not very effective if I don't understand how to transfer power. So what I'm doing is I have to learn, when he attacks me, I've got to drop and compress my body into the ground and get it prepared, because I need to draw this power up through the ground into his weapon and throw it that way. And it's I think a high skill to do that. So when I'm doing this position, I'm getting here, I've got to get in the right position, and I'm using my body and my power to get rid of that weapon. And it's not my upper body, it's my body coming from the ground, throwing it into his direction in a way that I can remove that weapon. So that's one skill. Another skill is, notice I'm not looking at him, and I've got to get in the right place and go. So you've got to be able to focus on different things and develop that power even when you're not looking in that direction. That's another skill that you have to develop. So the skill of the ground transfer of the power into his weapon is only one of maybe 20 skills that I need to possess to be able to do that kata correctly and accurately and effectively. Okay, to wrap it all up, you need to understand that the kata is just the framework, kind of like a picture. So you have the frame of the picture, and then you have the canvas, and the canvas is like the techniques of the different martial arts, and the paint is the actual skill. So how you put the paint on the canvas makes a high quality picture or a low quality picture. So that's how everything fits together, and by getting the right teacher, you can unlock the kata in a certain system. If you don't train with a teacher and you just learn this on video, you will have no idea what you're doing, even though you're mimicking the kata. So to wrap up this video, that's why this is my last video that I'm producing in the martial arts. Basically because all the stuff that I've put out there is just general principles that you can apply to a lot of different martial arts, and I'm glad you guys got some benefit from that. But beyond that, you really need to learn from a teacher to get the full benefit of training. Get wrapped up on the right and wrongness of a kata, because sometimes I teach a certain way because I want to emphasize a certain skill. I may teach a different way because I'm emphasizing a different skill. But to get wrapped up on, is this kata correct? Is this technique correct? I think that's really the wrong approach, and it divides everybody instead of brings everybody together. And one thing I want to say about my katas that I put onto the internet, as far as me doing the actual katas themselves in Katori Shinto Ryu, I want to say that I'm trying to show a particular skill set. So the speed, the accuracy, the timing, things like that. And so I may do it fast enough that I lose a little bit of the detail, but there's a lot of videos out there on the detail of the kata. I'm trying to show as many skills as I can in that kata transfer. So I'm very particular, and I put these together for a specific reason. So just understand that's what I'm trying to show, is a lot of different skills and not pure kata. So a lot of you have reached out to me personally and said, can you come to our school and teach? And I'll say this, is that, if it's an Aikido school, I can freely give information to Aikidoists. And, if you want to take your techniques, I don't change your techniques, but I can show you how to use your power from the ground and how to use it more effectively so it will translate better into your body techniques. But with the Katori Shinto Ryu, I have to be very selective on who I teach because it's a very hard skill to learn. And I travel internationally and I will only go to certain schools. And so just contact me and we can go from there.